Hey there viewers, welcome back to Ray of All Trades. Next on the bench is a curb find. Nice little bagger mower, Toro super recycler. Let's see if we can get it running. I got a friend that really needs one of these. Tell you what, let's do a couple of preliminaries on it. What's this thing look like? It's got oil. Might be just a little overfull. It has absolutely no gas at all in it. Got some spider webs. Got a homemade pull cord on it. Let's see if it's got compression. That compression feels pretty good. Tell you what, I'd like to just go ahead and put some gas in it and see what it does. This might be one of those that surprises me. That ought to be enough to test it. Give it a couple of the old primes. I hear air moving. No sign of life yet. Let's check it for spark real quick. Well, I couldn't see a spark. Well, it doesn't smell like gasoline on here, so I'm a little bit concerned about that. Let me grab a jumper wire and make it ground. Let me turn out the lights. Oh, there we go. Alright, I can finally see it. Alright. So I got a few things going on here. Number one, I do have spark. The test light showed it. I just had to ground the electrode. I do see that the half tank of gas I put in is coming out of the gas tank right here, so there's a crack in the tank. So I've got a trick on how to fix that. Y'all stay tuned. I've also got a pull rope that's fraying really quickly. Blades don't look too bad. I would like to get a compression test real quick, see if that pull rope will handle it. Before y'all pick on me too much, it's a cheap compression tester. All I care about is that it's building compression. Everybody gets wrapped around the whole what is it, and I get it as far as like finding balance rates and things like that. I just want to see when I build compression. So, because several things on a small engine will affect that. Number one, the length of the hose. Number two, the quality of the gauge. This is not a very high quality gauge. Number three, the valves and everything might have some junk on them that might clear up after it starts. All I really want to do is see, do I start building compression? See, is everything working, or do I have a giant hole in the piston? Move all this stuff, because whenever on a push mower, whenever you're pulling that handle, that rope, that blade's turning. We'll see how many of these pulls I can get in before the rope breaks on me. I'd say that's about 4 medium pulls, something like that. And I'm building compression. It's already showing 60. On this gauge, I would say that's probably fair for this motor. Let's go ahead and address the rope. Get a spark plug in this thing, address the tank, and address the carburetor. This is a pretty cool mower. I don't know much about it. I do know that Toro makes some commercial line equipment. I don't think this is commercial line. It actually isn't too bad of a mower either. Gonna have to pull that cover off and pull this gas tank off of here, which is usually a 3/8 bolt down here. That this right here is probably going to be in the way. And at some point I'm going to get that fuel line off because I want to try to get that gas out of there. I love this flip socket. It's about to smell like gas in the shop here pretty quick. This is either I think this is an aluminum deck. I'll go ahead and pull this line off of here and get it in that bucket. Oops, there it goes. I tried to get the fuel line off of there and it failed before I even got a chance. So pulled right off the tank. Somebody went through a lot of trouble to not have to change a pull rope. Hey, it's ingenious. It works for them great. Alright, let's see. Should be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then one up here should take off all of the pull rope shroud. There you go. Excuse me for 1 second. I'm gonna get this gasoline out of this garage. It smells terrible. So we know we want to get the carburetor off and get it cleaned. Look at the air filter. Let's get all this stuff out of the way. I thought there was 4. Pull off the breather cover. A lot of times this right here warps, and people end up double gasketing this to try to get a seal when you hit that primer. It's pushing air up this tube into the carburetor. The air goes into the carburetor and pushes fuel up into the emulsion tube, into the main jet. Allows the carburetor to get a little bit extra fuel. So that's your primer. Fuel line, definitely getting a new one of those. I think I saw water coming out of that just now. Yep, let's pull out the 2 3/8 bolts right there. Carburetor mounting bolts, and then we're going to pull off that governor linkage just like that. I just twisted it down. 1/2-inch socket gets this off. So get this in the ultrasonic cleaner and clean it up while we're doing everything else. That smells bad. 1/2-inch. Yeah, that's not gas coming out of there, that's water. So, yeah, this right here is one jet, and that one's already plugged up. There's a hole through the bottom, and then it comes up through the middle right there, and that's plugged up. The bowl is full of a mixture of gas and water. It smells terrible. Pull out the float and the needle, and this is the type that has that rubber seat in there, so we want to be very careful when we're cleaning this out that we don't lose that. A lot of people blow air right through here and they'll shoot that gasket, that seat, all the way across the room. If you have one to replace it, ideally that's the best way to do it. And then this gasket, if it doesn't fall off easily, leave it on there when you put it in the ultrasonic cleaner, because it will tear more than likely if you try to rip it off. If you let it heat up slowly with the ultrasonic cleaner, a lot of times it'll vibrate loose or it'll stay intact. That's assuming that you're not using harsh chemicals in your ultrasonic cleaner. I'm using like a degreaser and water, hot water. Let me get these in the ultrasonic cleaner. I'll start on this pull rope next. I've got a motor I'm putting in, a Cub Cadet right now. I've got 2 chainsaws on the bench. I've got every single work surface is covered with parts and pieces. Got another motor I'm rebuilding. So forgive me that I'm doing this on my lap. Out of 1, 2, 3, 4 workbenches, every one of them's full right now. So let me see if I can get this off of here. hold on to these when you're taking them apart. Make sure you don't lose anything, and make sure you remember your orientation. When the dogs come out, the dogs are what grabs your key that's on top of your flywheel. And it should be able to lift this whole thing out, and then the spring's going to let go. Get the spring out of here without breaking it all up. Normally you would let the rope in to let it go. This one, the rope, somebody had tied it into a knot, so I really couldn't do that. So I'm just trying to very gently let this spring unwind. Like I said, normally you could undo it and let the rope slowly bring it back. Right, here's our rope, excuse me, our spring. Hopefully I remember the orientation. Let's get the measurement. I think that this rope might be too big, the one that I have. We may end up defaulting back to some 550 cord. All I'm going to do is cut the knot off right here at the very last spot so that I can get a rough idea how long this rope was before. Even though it was messed up like this, it actually was the right length. Look what it was doing. That was a 550 cord right there. At least part of one. And the rope that I have to replace it with is a little bit on the thick side. Let's clean this out. When we go to put this in here, the spring's going to reach in and grab that. So let's go ahead and wind it up. There's lots of tricks on how to do this. I'm just going to show you the old-fashioned way. One of them is just putting it in a drill. This stuff is sharp. And it can spring out at any second. There you go, just set it in there kind of like that. And remember, safety glasses, because this thing could spring out at any second. So it's around that groove right there, and then that one there needs to grab the center right here. But the first thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of grease on there. Try to keep that spring pointing away from you. I'm going to send this one out that hole. Just like that. Don't worry, because we actually can wind this rope as it's in there if we need to. But I'm going to go ahead and get it somewhat close to start out. What I'm going to attempt to do is put this on there and turn it and feel for that spring catching that lip right there. I think I lost you guys. I just put a little bit of penetrating oil on there just to lube it up. This thing's old. And I put these two dogs back in place. I checked for proper spring tension on this. If I needed more, I'd pull the rope up on the inside here and either wind tighter or wind looser. I feel like it's got the right amount of spring tension for when the rope is released. This plate right here has these grooves that the dogs have to, these arms of the dogs have to ride inside those grooves. So you need to make sure that you get that back in place so that when you pull on the rope, the dog should expand, and when you release the spring, they should come back in. When you're all assembled, make sure that it operates like it's supposed to. See, the dogs come out, let go, the dogs go back in. Dogs come out, goes back in. That's what actually grabs right here and turns the motor. We'll set this aside for a second. We're going to put the handle on at the very end. So the gap on this coil is way too close. So I got spark, but it could be better. Let's go ahead and set this thing on here. And I think our ultrasonic cleaner just shut off. Turn the magneto until the business card, the magnet is in line with the coil. Let the coil suck itself back in. See, it's pulling it in. Just give it a little push just to make sure that it's on tight. Hold it in place and snug them down. You can even see the marks where that coil was rubbing a little bit. Okay, we need to clean that carburetor up. I can put the cover back on and do the carburetor later, but you guys won't be able to see as well. So we're going to end up cleaning up the carburetor, get it reassembled, and then we'll be fixing the gas tank later on in the video. Very unprofessional to be working on my lap here showing you guys something, but what can I say? When you're waiting on parts, you're waiting on parts. If anybody wants to know, the water level comes up to here in the container, and I just drained it off. Welding tip cleaners. Just going to pass them through the openings, get all that stuff cleaned out of there. The one in the center, you should be able to see it through the hole here. See this center emulsion tube, you can see it come up through that main jet. I believe that actually might do it. I did not pull out the Welch plug here. There's passages under that. That one there, I did not get a pipe cleaner through it, and I see that I should have. And that goes way down inside there, down to that Welch plug, it feels like. I mean, aftermarket carbs are cheap, but I mean, if you can save it, why not go ahead and save it? And these carburetors are so simple. Needle fits right inside that groove like that. And that drops down into the seat like that. Little arm just slides through to hold it all in place. There's really no adjustment to this thing because it's a plastic float, so there's no adjustment to it. In this position like this, I should be able to blow air through. When I flip it over, I shouldn't be able to blow air through. Tastes terrible, I'm not gonna lie. And that gasket that I was talking about before, because I never pulled it off, it's still in pretty decent shape. So that gasket on the outside comes into play if the float gets stuck in the down position, then it would overfill. If there's too much gas dumping in, there's some debris on the needle and seat, or it can't seal off, whatever. So basically what I'm getting at is in normal conditions, that gasket really shouldn't matter much because the gas only fills up the bowl, I don't know, about that far. So it shouldn't actually come up here to that gasket. Just snug that on down, let the gaskets do the work. That O-ring right there is what seals that carburetor. So I'm just going to cheat a little bit because I don't have an O-ring to replace it. I'm just going to put a little bit of gasoline resistant RTV on it to seal it up. 1184 is what I use for that stuff. Not necessary at all, but since I'm not replacing that gasket, if I had an intake leak, it would start running lean. And since I can't, like I said, I don't have the part, I'm just going to give it a little bit of extra help just to make sure if there's a crack in that O-ring, it's taken care of. This hole right here is where that governor slides into, so kick it to the side and put it up on there. What I'm listening for when I press the primer bulb is air shooting out of this hole right down here. And I can hear it. And all it's doing is pushing air into that hole right there on the gasket. let's get the breather back on there. Let's go ahead and put the cover back on. I just wanted you guys to be able to see how that carburetor goes on there. There was a little dimple sticking out right there that I had to get past. 4 3/8 bolts, and then one for the oil dipstick, 5/16. My friends across the pond, this would have been a 10mm and this would have been 8mm. They're almost the same. They're not exactly the same. Basically almost the same to where I can use them interchangeably most of the time. Especially dealing with impact stuff where it's got a lot of play. Hopefully you guys can see me okay, because I had to open the door because of the gas fumes. Brought the gas tank back in. Let's give this thing a brand new fuel line. This right here is my magic ingredient for fixing that gas tank. I'll show you here in just a second. Fuel line on here. Get this fuel line routed over to the carburetor. Not lose all my gas. Let's get you on there. I don't know why I don't just keep these things on my hip. The van pliers, I always end up needing them at some point. Thing always makes the job so much easier. If I remember, I'll link them in the description. They're not a sponsor, but I wish they were. Those guys, those things are awesome. The gas tank's still broken. I haven't fixed it yet. Between the gas tank, so the gas tank's on this side, the engine's on this side. There's a gap in between. This spacer. So this comes through kind of like that. So the gas tank ear is on this side and the motor's on that side. Back to my trusty flip socket. Let's go ahead and throw an air filter on this thing while we can. Let's take the rope out of here. Tried to get a little bit of the fumes out of here and got the door closed again. So I just drilled this hole a little bit bigger. Go ahead and push this rope through. Grab my favorite pliers again. All I'm going to do is tie myself a really small knot on the end. There's not enough room for like a figure eight or a bowline or anything like that. What I can do is melt the whole end together, which is what we're doing. Just like that, and like that. Now this is the exciting part, at least for me. The funny thing is I might even have a spare tank like this laying around somewhere, because it's very popular, but I wanted to take this opportunity to do a little science experiment. So this is baking powder. Baking powder, when combined with super glue, forms a very hard surface, almost like it welds stuff together. You can tell because it actually gets really hot when you have it on there. So it's got a chemical reaction that's occurring. What it is, I don't know. That's for science. Science guys can probably explain that a lot better. Prop yourself up so that the gas is on the other side. All I'm going to do, take turns putting super glue and baking soda on this area, and you'll see it actually start to crystallize up. It's going to make a mess. It's going to look terrible, but it bonds really, really well. Just going to drop all that on there. Okay, I let it sit up for a few minutes, probably about 5 or 10 while I cleaned up some of my tools. I don't know what breathing in baking powder does, but I'm gonna say breathing it in is probably not good. Mostly because I don't know. Alright, let's see if we can find a spark plug for this thing. If she runs good, maybe we'll give her an oil change. Let's see, I've got a brand new Champion. Right at 30 thousandths. Looks like the belt for the power drive is missing, so I don't anticipate that to work. But the blade's actually, other than being dirty, the blade's actually pretty sharp. Alright, let's see if she runs. I'm not the only one out here running. Let's see if you guys can hear it. Give it a couple of primes. Make sure I didn't lose all my gas. There's barely any in there. Let's try it anyway. Well, the way it's something like that, I've either got a bad ignition coil or that carburetor is worse off than I thought. Let's bring it back in and check it out. Alright, so I've got the bail closed on the handle. Got a spark tester in line. Let's see what's actually occurring here. She went into runaway condition, so either that governor is having a hard time or something else is going on. This is your governor. You set your RPMs by this tab right here. You either bend it out or back based on getting your RPMs right. This right here is your governor arm. So as the motor revs up, it or slows down, it pulls it back. Revs up, it pushes it forward. What I'm noticing is this arm is bent and it's rubbing on that tube right there. So, and it looks like it's been doing it for a while. Something else I noticed is that this plate right here, the throttle shaft, is extremely loose, like it's worn out. I'm wiggling side to side. So that's a huge leak. I think I need a carburetor for this thing because that one is just plumb worn out. That's your throttle plate right there. Let me see if I have one of those carburetors. But yeah, that's definitely what's causing it. Either it's getting hung up back here, it's getting hung up back there on that pipe, the intake pipe, the breather pipe, or it's getting hung up because of that loose plate right there is probably binding up somewhere. All right, let's throw a aftermarket carb on this thing. Got a carb, gasket, O-ring, all for 10, 12 bucks, something like that. concern on the governor rod dragging, but I think it might just be the play. For the record, you don't have to take this off. I was doing that mostly so you guys could see. Oh, take the O-ring off with it. Good. O-ring. Let's get that. That was very snug. Let's try to get this off here. Thought I was going to be slick and do it quick. There we go. Just like that. Yep, no play there. Or this one, the whole thing moves. And let's throw a new gasket on here. Let's see, it looks like it goes that way right there. So the driver sat on 1. Yeah, let's see how well this thing runs. A little bit fast. still hunting just a little bit, probably about 50 RPMs. That ought to do for my friend. So all they're trying to do is pick up some clippings, grass clippings. If you guys got something out of the video, I really appreciate a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out.